Welcome back to Until Saturday, boys and girls. Did it kind of sound like the beginning of Solid Verbal? I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous.
A little bit.
We are joined today by college football podcast royalty.
If there was a dude alert for podcasts, we have one right now.
Yeah. So I got to be on my A game. Last night when we were recording at 2 a.m. out of Pete Sampson's living room, I was stumbling over my words. I was very, very tired. I'm on 48 minutes of sleep since that point, but I'm going to try to be cleaner on this week's episode of Sunday Sound-Off here. Dan Rubenstein, obviously, from the Solid Verbal joining us. I'm Ari Wasserman, David Ubben. Did you get back to Knoxville pretty safely or what?
Like 45 minutes ago, Ari. I'm on edge right now. We got, it's been a run. It's been a run, but we're here.
Yeah, I think that you and I might have to be writing after this, and I can't even imagine doing that.
It's gonna be. We'll see how it goes. Godspeed to those of you who have to read that tomorrow.
The thing that I wanted to start the show off with, because if you do not know this about our guest Dan Rubenstein, he went to college at Oregon. Dave Ubben just made his first trip to Oregon, and you said that you had an Oregon hot take for people before we get into the nonsense that you were talking about last night. What is your Eugene, Oregon hot take?
I want to preface by saying that Oregon is awesome. And
Eugene was
fantastic.
Be bad.
No, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's a preference.
Continue.
Dan.
Yeah.
I was somewhat aware of the shout tradition.
Okay.
The Matt
Between the
Kearney,
third and fourth quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, the Matt Kearney coming home tradition sing-along.
Mm-hmm.
Significantly better than shout.
Okay, so I respect your opinion. I don't have an opinion because that tradition started after excuse me, I'm getting all choked up here. That tradition, I think the Matt Kearney involvement in the Oregon program was sort of has its roots in will he, won't he go when Chip Kelly was weighing like NFL offers. And there was like a Matt Kearney last ditch, come on home kind of vibe.
I was ignorant of the whole thing.
Right. And I think I don't know if it was when he was flirting with Tampa or when he actually did go to the Eagles. So that's 2011 and 2012, going way back then. And I know Matt Kearney's from Oregon. And so I guess that's their own kind of version of country roads, right? The sort of geographic pride, the municipal pride. I just never was I was never a part of shout, nor was I a part of coming home. So I love a sing-along. I love that like Florida does it with Tom Petty. Like I love all of that stuff. And so anything that gets people like arm in arm swaying back and forth, people make fun of Texas A&M for all those traditions. And I think it's cool. And maybe I'm like a corny older guy now, but there is something that's very cool about that stuff. So your take is your take. I love the shout thing because I think the guy who really got super into it on the team, now I'm, what's his name? Not Travis Dye, his older brother, linebacker. I'm the Oregon person. I should know his name.
I gotta be honest, I'm not sure I knew Travis Dye had an older brother that played linebacker. I think I missed this.
He was like an all Pac-12. Travis Dye, like there were like 4 Dyes, to be clear. Dye, linebacker, Oregon, and people like Troy Dye. Troy Dye was like an all Pac-12 and like 6 years ago, not that long ago. And he started going nuts on the sideline with shout. And so now that like the players get into it, it's a whole thing. So I like it from afar. I think it's cool.
I gotta say, Ernest podcaster hat briefly, Ari. This last year of just me doing this job, I've been kind of all over Miami, Georgia, a lot of Boulder, Oregon, all these places. We live in a very beautiful country and with a lot of very cool people, with a lot of like geographic, topographical diversity. It's all awesome. Like Miami, Portland, Eugene, Boulder. Like,
well, what's crazy is that you actually live in one of the most underrated, beautiful parts of the country.
Very much so.
Like, I had no idea how pretty
it is.
Like the Great Smoky Mountains were. I had to drive through them to go to a poker tournament in Cherokee, North Carolina. So
I spent about 8 years in Dallas, which might be one of America's least physically attractive cities. So it's a little bit of whiplash going from Dallas to Knoxville, but legitimately, like. College football, the embrace of regionalism, it did make me a little sad for the end of the Pac-12 again, and that there's no league with like a true West Coast identity like that. It's I think important to recognize how much that sucks frequently. But hey, seriously, what a beautiful country with a lot of different places and a lot of different faces.
I'm glad you got to go to Eugene. That was great.
It was fantastic.
Everybody should try to make that pilgrimage. You feel the Harley revving up before the duck drives out. Like
it's so unique. It's just like there's so many things with Oregon that are just so Oregon.
Yes, you take the footbridge over the mighty Willamette River. There's just a ton going on. And I used to travel for SI when I did my tailgate show way back when. And so I've been to like 40 schools or something. Mm-hmm. And each of them is sort of they're all like my children. Each of them there are treasures in that you can, tailgate in like a radioactive lab parking lot at Mizzou. Like there's just like weird stuff everywhere. That's the best.
I've been in that parking lot.
I want to have my Ernest podcaster moment too. Please. I want to say that I had driven through South Bend before, like on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
This was my first game day experience at Notre Dame. And I got to say, that is one of the prettiest campuses I've ever been on.
Oh,
there is a certain element to it. And if you've listened to the show back to when Andy Staples was the host, I used to mock the notion of the movie Rudy, because I think that it is hilarious that there are a lot of fans who view this sport and NIL and the way that certain players view the programs that they're a part of through Rudy's eyes. Like they would sacrifice their body, their future, their finances for your favorite team, and they love their I used to be like, this is not how people feel.
Right.
But walking through Notre Dame's campus, I can almost hear the themes of that movie. I could see the leaves changing, the towers, the domes, the trees, the benches, the lakes. Like I was absolutely blown away by Notre Dame and what it had to offer. The stadium was great. The fans were great. The uniforms I thought were great. Some people didn't like them. I loved them. And I got to say that it was one of my favorite trips to any place that I've ever been.
And
I feel blessed to have been able to go.
Is what it is, right? It's college football Augusta. We were like, wow, there's other nice places, but this is like super like each blade of grass is just kind of different here. That's
I just think like this weekend in general with all the games, like this was a good weekend for sort of all of us to join arm in arm and just recognize how insane it is that we get to be paid to go to football games and talk about it. And like, thank you to the listeners, to fans, to readers. This is why we get to do it. And like, it's fantastic.
And to
I'm
be
sorry
grateful
for being earnest.
No, it's fine. And we should all just be grateful for this opportunity and be grateful that we're not emotionally tied to Baylor football this fall.
Yes.
or Iowa football.
Or Iowa. Yeah.
No, I think that it's pretty easy to say because, while we were on the podcast last night, I don't know if you get this way, Dan, you guys go live at midnight Eastern.
Yeah.
But I am so delirious from the day that like a lot of stuff doesn't land. And I was on the airplane looking through Iowa's box score today, and it is horrifying.
It's
like
rough.
It legitimately
of box scores
could not get worse. Like unless they had 4 less first downs, that's literally the only way it could have gotten worse. And
it's very bad. The game. The viewing experience of the game was such that you're like, did this team like come together 15 minutes before the game started to like formulate a plan? Like, were there guys from Canada, guys from Australia, guys from Denmark? And you're like, all right, here's how football works. And they're like they did their best.
Ready, break.
I will say, Dan, I did play rec league basketball this summer, and we're all adults with lives and children and wives, most of us, and we don't have time to practice. And we did formulate a strategy 15 minutes before the game, and it was roughly as coherent as Iowa's offensive cohesion. So I think I listened to you and Ty on the plane, and I think unserious is a perfect adjective for the Iowa football experience. Like, you cannot tell me that you're earnestly trying to be great, and that's the whole point.
But I'm going to go on record here, and I'm going to have my bold prediction before we get into the Sunday Sound-Off portion of the show. My bold prediction is that he will not reach 325 and that he will be retained.
Interesting.
Oh, I like it, Ari.
I think there's a legitimate chance that they play in the Big Ten championship game this year.
And that'll be enough.
And I think that there's a way that they could rationalize, we play the Iowa brand of football that we like. It wasn't always pretty, but we like to muck games up and the offense is a vessel to control the game the way that we want to control it. I don't know, father-son lingo that saves the job.
Can I tell you this? Not to jump in. This isn't my show. Michigan State, Purdue, Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska, with Wisconsin thrown in there after Purdue. There are so many winnable games for maybe just a below average offense to win. And so that's what you're striving for at this point. If you're Iowa football, below average on offense, and that wins you 9 games.
I think this is the perfect segue because there is, and I don't want to tease it, a very, very sad Iowa voicemail. So we can talk about this a little bit more. Let me get through my quick spiel here real quick. Welcome to Until Saturday, Sunday Sound-Off edition. We are really happy that you're here. And of course, the way that you guys have participated with this part of the show has meant a lot to me. It's meant a lot to Dave. The fact that we can hear your voices, the way that you participate, the way that you make this feel like a community. There's no such thing as a really good podcast without an actual community, and having your voices represented on the show means a lot. Be sure to subscribe to the Until Saturday YouTube channel if you're watching right now live. We appreciate it. If you are listening to this in podcast form on Monday morning, the show to the YouTube channels in the show's description. We go live every Thursday for picks, every Saturday night for reaction, and every Sunday for the Sound-Off show on YouTube. Be sure, if you want to be a part of this episode and you want to leave a voicemail, to call 316-462-9852. Again, that's 316-462-9852. And we will get your voice on the show. You can text that number too. We are definitely going to be partial to voicemails because funny, angry, sad, happy voices are what make this show better. And lastly, sign up for the Until Saturday newsletter, where you can get your daily fill of college football news right to your inbox. The link to that is also in the show's description. And I think we are ready to rock. So let's get into Sunday Sound-Off. Let's start with the first voicemail.
Hey, guys. First time caller, great show. Aaron Bingaman calling from Indiana. And I was in the room for the Ohio State Notre Dame game. I felt like Notre Dame did more to lose that game than Ohio State did to win the game. I think Ohio State showed some gumption on that last drive, but the fact that they had the ball being the result of some really weird play calling, 2 passes and final possession by Notre Dame with 4 minutes to go, the missed field goal, 2 dropped interceptions. What are your thoughts on the observation that really Notre Dame did more to lose the game than Ohio State did to win the game? All right, guys, love the program, and hope you answer my question. Thanks so much.
It's an interesting question. I suppose you could have to go back and look at some of the ifs and buts and candies and nuts of the Ohio State side of things. I actually liked the screen call on that last drive. I thought that was actually a smart call. Just JT Tuiomaloau is insane.
He's crazy. Yeah.
It's like, but I actually did like that call. The dropped interception, I mean, it wasn't like it was like a can of corn in his chest. I mean, that's a tough play. You could make the play. So I don't know. I kind of lightly disagree, but I can see how when you go back and watch that game, especially in a game where there's so few points and there's so few points and so many hinge points, I can see how you'd be kicking yourself, but I'm sure Ohio State feels the same way.
Here's the stat that I keep falling back onto. On the final drive of that game, Kyle McCord and Ohio State had a 3rd and 10, a 4th and 7, and a 3rd and 19, and converted all of them. Mm-hmm. And on the 3rd and 19, threw a bullet pass that got him down to the goal line, which set up the eventual game-winning play. The thing that I can't get past is how there were 10 people on the field. And then Marcus Freeman, after the game was over, trying to play it off as if he didn't want to sub.
Twice, by the way. Twice. And
2 plays. 2 plays.
Couldn't afford a penalty. And, I don't know if I have a misunderstanding of the rules here, but that would have just been a half yard closer to the goal line, right? With a full defense out there.
Right.
So would you rather have 4th and goal or whatever to go and goal with 3 seconds left without a defensive lineman in the gap that they're running the ball into? Or would you rather be at the half yard line with a 275-pound person there? I think that based on the way that it was hard for Ohio State to score on that final play, that if there was a person there, they probably would have lost, regardless of where the ball was snapped from.
When their alignment was off on that play too. They were misaligned horribly.
Yeah.
In addition to having 10 guys.
Yes. So I think that like Ohio State probably should get some credit for going out and winning the football game. But if you want to play the lost the game away game, I think you can do it on both sides. Ohio State played grab ass on a few fourth downs that they, could have converted into points or moved the football and moved the chains. And of course, Notre Dame missed a field goal. They also left some points out there. It kind of felt like just a good defensive battle. Marvin Harrison didn't really have much of an impact on this game, which is a really good job by Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame did everything in their power to win this football game, but I also think that Ohio State deserves credit for converting all of those tough third and fourth down situations on that final drive in order to win that game.
Well, isn't that the thing too? Like, I understand this as a fan of a team that has been in a number of huge games and lost huge games, that there is something to credit the winning team with not doing bad things and taking advantage of opportunities. Like, you can say like, oh, Notre Dame had miscues and they lost the game. They dropped this interception. They were unable to convert this. They didn't execute here, whatever. They had all of these chances. But what Ohio State did is, I think, not screwing up is underrated. And when you look at what separates teams that win 10, 11 games a year and what teams that win 8 or 9 games a year do, it's you don't see the screw ups and you don't think about the screw ups. So it's not like front of mind, but the fact that, Ohio State doesn't muff a punt, the fact that, you don't have a miscommunication between Kyle McCord and Emeka Egbuka and it end up with a Notre Dame interception or something like that. It's easy to say like, well, yeah, that's what they're supposed to do. But like 6.5 teams do that every year, and Ohio State's generally one of them. And so I think that's the difference, that Notre Dame isn't ready to do what it's supposed to do on every single play. And we saw that come to pass, literally the second to last play, and then again on the final play. And so that's where I think you give Ohio State credit, is their feet are clean because they didn't shoot themselves. And that's an actual winning skill to me.
I was listening to your beautiful voice on the way to the O'Hare Airport this morning, Dan. And
did you sleep ugly on the plane, by the way, on the way home?
No, I had some action on the NFL game, so I was, they had NFL Red Zone going.
Yeah,
of
course you did.
I'm not the smallest person in the world, so sitting in an airplane seat, I'm not the most peaceful sleeper there. So I'm, after we write whatever we write, we'll get to it. But you guys recorded and we recorded before. I think both of our podcasts really took a minute to discuss what Ryan Day said, both on national television about Lou Holtz, and then, of course, what he said in the post-game room that I was in before writing a column. And, that was the entire angle of my story in terms of like Ohio State's softness as a program and whether or not that's a real thing or why he was upset. And I was just wondering, because it seems to be a very big topic on the day. This isn't a voicemail, just my curiosity coming through. Do we like the way he acted? Do we not like the way he acted? Like, can you see why he would be upset? Because it's like, on one hand, you keep hearing everybody calling you soft, and you lose to Michigan 2 years in a row, and softness is what prevails. I would get tired of hearing it if I were him. On the other hand, it's an 87-year-old man who doesn't know what planet he's on, probably.
Right.
So it's like, which side of the fence do you land on in terms of what Ryan Day did? And did it just kind of seem like he was at the end of his rope hearing about it, and it just Lou Holtz was in the wrong place at the wrong time?
I think everybody runs hot on game day, and especially, you can go back. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Sark in the Alamo Bowl. Somebody just like accidentally touched him before running out on the field.
Oh, that was like a bowl official.
People are laughed about that. I found that to be like mildly concerning. Yeah, like that was weird.
Right. Well, I'm saying it's just like everybody's running hot. There's a ton of stress these guys feel. And I don't think it was the messenger as much as it was the platform that like you have this huge game on network television that everybody's watching. It's the only truly huge game of that moment. All due respect to Wazoo, Oregon State. And you have not a representative of the program, but sort of a symbol of the Notre Dame program come on, and in front of a very pro Notre Dame audience, which is what NBC generally is, even though obviously there's a bajillion Ohio State fans watching the game. He goes on network TV and he calls your team that you're working 18-hour days, you're recruiting for 2034 or whatever. Like, Ryan Day lives and breathes Ohio State more than anybody in this universe. And right before kickoff, somebody's like, your team is soft. And I really do think it's the moment and the timing of it all, and the fact that, this is not on Big Ten Plus or whatever that is. This is on NBC ahead of the biggest game of arguably the first half of the season. And, you're always trying to portray your program for recruits, for boosters, whatever, in the best possible light. And so when you have that opportunity to go on NBC and refute it and say, as it turns out, we were the more physical team, we didn't back down from this big defense, this big offensive line, he took that opportunity. And I always prefer somebody run hot than run cold. It's football.
Well, we're going to dig into this a little bit more, Dave, because
I think Lou Holtz is an avatar. If Lou Holtz had spouted some insane take, I don't think Ryan Day would have cared.
Well,
but it's a hit dog haulers sort of situation, right? He touched on something that was probably
actually occurring, and what we kind of got into it a little bit last night talking about. I think Ryan Day knows in his heart that if they would have lost that game, and not just lost it, but lost it in the manner in which it looked like they were about to lose it, giving up 2 11 and 13 play drives, where Audric Estime was carrying linebackers on his back like it was a dog and pony show.
Mm-hmm.
And they blew a 10-0 lead and then just got physically out-muscled before, losing the game. They had 2 separate opportunities at 4th and goal and 4th and 1 from the 1 to either score a touchdown or extend the drive in a critical situation down 4 late in the game, and they called a jet sweep and a pass. I think that there were a lot of things about the way that Ohio State was starting to slip in that game that were very reminiscent of the way that things had gone against Michigan. And if Ohio State would have lost 14-10, or, Notre Dame would have won in a way where they out-muscled them and broke their backs physically, despite the fact that they're, markedly less talented than them, then that would be a bad thing for the image of not only the program, which he was clearly already sensitive about, but his personal image. So to me, I think that was also, I don't think he's mad at Lou Holtz. I think that he wanted a resounding response to the notion that he and his program are soft, because if he actually gets to a point where people all believe that and it's true, that's when the seat gets starting hot. And I know that sounds crazy to people,
right?
But there were a lot of Ohio State fans, even after the win last night, that are to the end of their ropes with Ryan Day. And you might think that's crazy, Dave. You already admitted it last night or made that notion. But I think Ohio State is a team right now that is not a complete product, that is trying to build its way into a team that can actually beat Penn State and beat Michigan at the end of the year and maybe make the playoff. This isn't an Ohio State team that's a finished product that's just going to waltz into the Final Four. So winning that game and doing it the way that they did it, by actually getting that 1 yard at the end by running into nobody because there was nobody there, I think is a really big moment for the program at a very interesting intersection between soft and hard. You know what I mean? Like, that to me is a pretty significant night. Do
you think it's a status thing too? I don't mean to interrupt, but do you think it's like right now, Ohio State, in terms of the national perception, to me, and maybe I'm wrong on this, is like, okay, Ohio State obviously is still behind the powers of the South. They're still, when they have those big moments against Georgia, when they have those big games against Alabama, Clemson, whoever, like, they take a step back, right? They're not able to get wins in those moments. And then you're like, well, they're the class of the Midwest, they're the class of the Big Ten. Well, you lose 2 straight to Michigan. You can't quite say that. Then you lose to Notre Dame. What are you? What are you in the sport if you're not on the level of the best teams in the South and you are on a losing streak to your rival in the same region? And then you lose to the other, I don't know what we consider Penn State if they're Midwest or whatever, but Big Ten. So you have all this stuff sort of floating over Ryan Day and Ohio State's head. And I think there is, look, it comes back to recruiting. Notre Dame and Ohio State are battling each other for recruits. And if now you're squarely behind Notre Dame and Michigan in your region,
bad place to be.
Well, when Urban Meyer left Ohio State, I think you could have made the case that Ohio State was the second sturdiest program in college football.
Sure.
Or the second best program in college football. Now you can't even make the case that Ohio State is the best program in its own division.
Right.
I think they're second place in their own division. Clearly, they've lost 2 in a row.
Matters.
And I think you could actually make a case that they are the third best team in their own conference right now. Because Penn State's a really good football team. We're going to find out here in 3 weeks how good they actually are. But I feel like there was a little bit of a discussion last night, Dave, and I'm going to throw it back to you about how last night wouldn't have been as big of a deal in the big picture if Ohio State would have lost. And I was listening back to it. I was like, I actually don't think the people understood what you were trying to say. So I just want to give it back to you so that we can clear that up, because I think you do understand that if they would have lost, their program would have been in a dark, dark place right now.
It's pretty simple. I think people would have freaked out and would have been in their front yards crying, or just I don't know what they would have done. People would have freaked out and it would have been stupid. I'm not saying that the world wouldn't have felt like it was ending in Columbus, but have a little perspective. You're still one of the 5 most talented teams and whatever, and you can still beat literally anybody on a given field. You went toe-to-toe with Georgia 9 months ago. And I think this Ohio State team's probably not as good as last year's, but probably, not that far off. So, it's the season. The irrationality of fans and the lack of seeing the big picture is sort of part of what makes the sport beautiful. But as respectfully as I can say this, chill out.
Yeah, and Ohio State can still roll Michigan and Penn State.
Yes.
And it'll feel a lot farther away in the rearview mirror if that happens.
Yeah.
We should do a Ryan Day approval survey with fans and see what it is. I think you would be shocked by how low that approval is. I want to run through a few things.
I wouldn't be shocked. I just think it's stupid. That's my point.
Well, yeah, maybe they're Ralph Russo texted me this today with that group chat, and he said that I spent so much time in Columbus that my brain has morphed into a way that doesn't operate like a normal college football reporter's.
And it was already already in a weird place.
But it's also there was nobody more qualified to be writing off of that game last night than I was, because that was my entire life for my entire, just the bulk of my adult life. So I understand those people, I think, pretty well. I've lived it. I've seen some really big wins. I've seen some pretty bad losses, and seen a lot of some other stuff too. And it was kind of cool to be back, but certainly really, really fun to be at.
Man, you guys are really selling this.
Yeah.
We're usually excellent, but we're always miserable. That's awesome. That's an awesome way to live.
Well, also, too, you got to take into account that they haven't won a national title in 10 years. And considering the ingredients that they've put into the program, it's pretty remarkable that they haven't.
Are they okay? Do we need to get...
no, I know, but think about it,
we need to get Sarah McLachlan out here? What do we...
It's you don't get it, though. It's they watch Alabama and Georgia do the same thing, and they're winning national championships like it's easy baked muffins, and they've gone a decade. It really irritates them.
I do.
And they'll be happy for a day if it happens. No pun intended.
Yeah.
Georgia's went to back. We haven't gone back to back in decades, Ari. Yeah. What do we do? The program is broken. We got to get Urban back in here. What's happening?
Yeah. Let me go through a few quick things before we get to some more voicemails. The Pac-12 has 4 teams in the top 10. Washington's 7th, USC is 8th, Oregon is 9th, and Utah is 10th. Washington jumps USC. Do you think that's the right call?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave thinks that Washington's better than Georgia now. So, yeah.
Washington is maybe not better than Georgia, but Ari, you can't look at what Washington's done this year and not say that it's been more impressive than what we've seen from Georgia. That's just
who's the best quarterback Washington's played? No, you can only play the teams that are on your schedule. That's the only thing. I guess
Taylor Green probably. Yeah.
Okay.
There's something to be said. There's something to be said for flexing every single week.
Yeah.
They haven't beat anybody, but Boise is okay. Boise's a probably top 35 team. It's okay, but they have just mashed everybody.
Yes,
there's something to be said for that.
I continue to say taking care of business is underrated. And
yes.
Who is doing it on the level that Washington is? Kind of nobody after ASU kind of stomped USC on the ground last night.
Seattle is one of the last major American cities that I've never been to.
Oh, good place.
And the fact that they are playing Oregon at home in 2.5 weeks is a really I don't know what I need to do, but I want to go.
We need to be. All right, let's do the Sunday Sound-Off in the Puget Sound and make it literally the Sunday Sound-Off.
That'd be cool.
Go whale watching? It can be.
What about the Sunday Sound Tarp Off? That would be good.
That's pretty good. You will feel like if you're in the stadium, you will feel as if the stadium is crumbling. It's kind of an older structure. It's since been renovated, and when you watch Washington games that are really humming, the camera shakes, and the whole if you're in the press box, it's like an overhang press box. Mm-hmm. And so you feel like, I'm just going to fall to my soon-to-be death when it gets really loud. I went to the game many, many years ago. Oregon actually won that game, but it was still, it's a frenzied environment. And when they're really good, it's quite fun. So I recommend it. And I have pizza recommendations for you in Seattle.
I just want to see grown men throw fish around. that
Yeah,
you know
you can
too
do
much
that
to
too.
ask?
You can go to the Pike Market. Yeah.
Do you think that that's actually an efficient way of moving the fish around, or do you think it's all for the show?
Well, no, they usually use a conveyor belt that goes across the top. No, that's it's for show.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if
yeah.
there was like a reason to like launch these fish.
No, I'm sure at some point.
Somebody's got to get the B-roll on Sunday Night Football.
That's true.
Yeah.
Every time. It's
Yeah, we gotta
coffee
hurry
being
up,
poured
'cause-
with the with the latte art, and then the fish being thrown.
Lastly, I just wanted to say that Ohio State jumped over Florida State, and I think we're going to get a question about who we think are the best teams in the country, which we've kind of gone into a little bit here, but we will finish off by each giving a top four. But Ohio State leapfrog Florida State, which is what happens when I think that they have the best win so far this year. And I want to say to your co-host, Ty, that I was thinking about him last night in the stadium.
Oh.
And I wanted to say this because I didn't say it on the show last night. And the thing that I'm learning from you and listening to your show and being lucky enough to have dinner with you, Dan, on Friday night is that the best thing about college football podcasting isn't the stats, it isn't the takes, and it isn't even just like the predictions. It's the emotions of it, right?
Oh, I could not have said it better. Yeah.
And I wanted to say that I legitimately walked out of Notre Dame Stadium the other night, and I felt bad for them. And it wasn't because they lost or that they are, they're people that deserve to be felt bad for, but you have a very passionate fan base that hasn't won a game like that in a very long time, and I thought they did enough to win, and they didn't. And at a certain point, you just got to be like, when's it going to happen?
But yeah. Something.
Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And we love Ty. I heard from media friends that they were saying like Ty talking about that game was full on compelling. Like hearing him try to upload his emotions. And we always have more listeners when Oregon or Notre Dame loses. We always do, because you are going to get a rawness to the show, I think, that you don't usually get, because these are two teams that happen to win a lot that we root for. But yes, Ty, he was like, don't say sorry. It doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't
don't say sorry. It doesn't help.
Sorry. It does nothing for me. And so that's a rare version of Ty. And so, yeah, the huge game that clearly the crowd has been thinking about, this like delayed gratification for 9 months or whatever since last year.
Yeah.
And then being in the stadium when it empties out, when that home team crowd empties out, depressed and sad and hopeful until the very end. It's a very, very specific environment.
Yeah, and my favorite one that you did, I think it was after Oregon's loss to Georgia last year. At the beginning of the year, like you got on the camera and you're like, I feel nothing.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to tell you? It was that was a vacuum of emotion, right? Which is still something. But like when your team loses 49-3, I'm sure TCU fans, are you have the silver lining when you lose by 60 or whatever to Georgia in the national championship game. Like, hey, fun season. This was all gravy. This is all bonus, whatever. But when you watch your team open the season in a matchup that you've been looking forward to all year, 49-3, you're like, well, that was never a thing. That was never something that I could enjoy. Yeah.
Well, then at least y'all did to Colorado what Georgia did to you. So
that's what Oregon has always done to Colorado. I started my Oregon fandom because my freshman year was 2001, and that finished with.
But that had to be sweeter for you yesterday, though. Yeah.
Oh, man, we can talk about the most personally satisfying Oregon wins ever. And you know what? If you want to tie it all together with a neat little bow, it felt pretty damn good to watch Oregon stomp. I'm using the word stomp, but thrash Ohio State in Columbus a couple of years ago. That was very fun. I watched it on TV, but CJ Verdell up the gut. That was personally satisfying in a way that I don't know if I've felt otherwise, because you're always waiting as an Oregon fan for like, oh, Stanford actually pulled it out when it looked like they weren't going to, or something weird like that. But yes, the personal satisfaction yesterday wasn't super high because I never thought Colorado was on the level of this year's Oregon.
My question though, Dan, is did you feel a inner conflict as somebody who is an Oregon fan and also has spent a lifetime working on the internet and watching your head coach demonize the pursuit of clicks?
I enjoyed the creativity of that speech.
The bar, if we're being real, though.
But also, like, he knew the cameras were there. This wasn't Dan,
no. I guess a camera was in there. A camera was in there.
Those network TV cameras aren't small. So I appreciated the creativity. I appreciate the fire. I'm a fan of Dan Lanning and what he's done at Oregon and what I think he will do at Oregon. But let's not pretend Oregon isn't marketing itself aggressively and has been for 25 years. And let's not pretend like what Deion Sanders is doing isn't super savvy and smart, because it most certainly is, because the only way he's going to get players of the caliber that Oregon has is by appealing nationally to as many eyeballs as humanly possible. And for however long he's in Boulder or for however long he's a college football coach, it's super smart and savvy. It's why Nick Saban allows cameras to film behind the scenes at Alabama or Ohio State or Clemson. All of these people realize that attention is the thing that is the most valuable element in this sport. And Deion just happens to have a much bigger personality than the people he recruits again.
The one thing that I wish I could do and change around the world is to help general fans know what clickbait is, because they say it a lot and it's never clickbait. Okay, let's go to the next voicemail, guys.
Yes, sir.
I'm an Iowa fan. I'm currently at the Whiteout game. Please tell me this gets better as a college football fan. I know there's great highs in this that make it all feel better, but right now it's horrible. Thanks. Bye.
I wish I could tell you that it's going to get better, and I think it will eventually. It just might be a long, long time from now, because I don't think that this is all just going to be like, well, Iowa scored 279 points this year. The coach is fired. Like, also, too, the head coach is going, even if it's not his son, is going to hire an offensive coordinator that calls a scheme that complements the defense.
Right.
Like, this isn't like it's well, we are 6 sweet months away from the air raid. Like, it's just not in the cards for Iowa in the immediate future for me. Like,
I've heard Elliott Smith albums more uplifting than that.
Well, you know, the thing that I don't know is, as an Iowa fan, if you win the game 10-7 or 6-4, whatever that score was, or 9-3, do you even enjoy winning that way? Like, that's the hardest thing to me. It's like, do you enjoy watching it? This is an entertainment product. Everybody likes to see their team score. If your team is peak Iowa and you are winning games, 10, 11 games in a year with an offense that averages 23 points a game, and you're winning half of your games 12-6, is that even a satisfying experience as a fan, even when it's working?
Okay. Here's what I would say. When did USC Iowa in the Holiday Bowl 2019, 10-3 Iowa defeats 8-5 USC. 49-24. Just go on YouTube and watch the highlights of that if you're an Iowa fan, right? So, like, there is proof of concept. Like, there were, I think that was, what's his name? Smith Marset, I think, was like all over the place in that game.
Yeah.
ISM. So there is an element of Iowa that it can happen in the right scenario at the right time, whatever, and that it's just deep within the recesses of the Kirk Ferentz hard drive, a willingness to open things up. You're right, though. It's his vision. It's his program. It's what he wants the offense to serve as. And that's what you just have to get. Like, how does Kirk Ferentz go into a quarterback's living room and say, all right, hear me out? Like, what comes after that? Like, why? How? I'm going to ask every question. Like, what is it that he can sell about this Iowa team to a wide receiver, to a running back, to a quarterback? I mean, I guess the running back's going to get a lot of touches, but like, how do you go into Nate Stanley's house successfully, mind you, and say, oh, we really think you're going to thrive here? Like, what is that conversation? It seems impossible, and yet it keeps happening.
I just don't like watching them acknowledging the existence of Iowa. I spend my Saturdays going out of my way a lot of the time to watch as little of it as possible because it makes me sad.
Yeah. I'm
just like, this is just like, you know, it's a 10 times worse version of like Penn State a few years ago, you know, like the Hackenberg era, some of that stuff where you're just like, I don't want to spend, like, you only get a dozen of these, 10, 12, 15 Saturdays a year.
Yep.
I don't want to spend it watching Iowa football and imagining the people that are emotionally invested and feel a gravitational pull toward watching that. I just, like, it's kind of funny, but it's really sad.
Well, this is the thing. Last year it was funny. The drive to 325 inherently created something that we could all make fun of. But if you go look at the actual box score and watch the game, it's not funny. They're not able to compete. They are not equipped to do anything. It doesn't matter what they do. They played in a game last night, and granted, it was raining.
No, I don't care.
They could not get a first down.
It's raining for Penn State too. Yeah.
So
so everybody's. I think everybody, now that Alabama's experienced it, everybody's watched their team trot a quarterback out and have absolutely zero confidence that they could convert a 3rd and 9, or are down 5 with 3.5 minutes left. Like, there's no way we win this game. There's no way this team can drive 57 yards and win this game. And everybody has had that. I've had that as an Oregon fan. Ohio State, at some point, I'm sure has had that. I don't know if it was like the Kenny Guyton very brief era, or if like you're going back to like what? I don't even know when that would be, in like the early 2000s. Whatever it is, everybody's had that like 3rd string quarterback come in and be like, there's just no way. There's absolutely no way. It's 3rd and 7, and that's 6 yards too far for him. And so that Iowa's building their whole rocket ship out of that idea it's infuriating. If I were an Iowa football fan, I would just get in the best shape of my life this fall and spend Saturdays just lifting heavy weights, get some cardio in, meditate, and just be productive on your Saturdays, and then watch a better game when Iowa's not on.
Have you guys been watching the Jets with Zach Wilson?
No, of course
at all.
A very slight amount.
It's like that's what Iowa's trying to do.
Yeah,
it's insane.
All right, let's go to the next one.
I have one more in me.
Hey guys, this is John Skulski calling from Aranjuez, Spain. I'm just calling to answer your question and clarify, I am not a Spaniard.
I want to know
Would you have nailed this accent? Would you have nailed this accent, Dave?
That's a Spaniard if I've ever heard one.
I'm from Columbus, and I may have lived like a decade and a half in Europe, but my accent is thoroughly and profoundly Central Ohio. That said, my question is, as of right now, solely based on on-field performance, who do you guys have in your top 4? All right, I'm going to bed. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning here. Good night. Go Bucks.
Let me tell you guys, Columbus is the Barcelona of the Midwest. So
he didn't say Central Ohio, so that made me realize that he is stateside.
I think if you've been there 15 years, you are a Spaniard, just for the record.
Ooh,
but
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So his top quattro.
So how do you guys? So how do you guys go about this? Do you do it based on what's already happened? Do you go?
Well, he asked based on what you've seen on the field. I can do mine right now.
Being based on what you see in the field is a math equation. Are you going to use your heart at all in this? Or are you going to just be
I'm
like,
going to say who's getting it right now. Pretty simple.
No, I know, but are you going to use quality wins to help guide you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though
you go first, David. I love the collar you're wearing too.
Yeah.
Can I mention that? I love the collar you have on.
Yes.
Okay.
My top 4, I'm going to go Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, and Texas.
I was like, my feet were digging into the turf there because I was like,
you have to
say something stupid.
Again, Ari, I've been saying I respect Texas. Going and beating Bama in Tuscaloosa is one of the 2 or 3. We'll say it's the 3rd best win. Florida State's win's better. Ohio State's win better. That's the 3rd best win of the season so far. I respect Texas. Just don't trust them.
Okay. Utah has won without a quarterback. That's much more difficult to do, and they've played real teams in Florida, Baylor, and now UCLA. I don't know what order I have my top 4. Maybe I'll sort it out as I speak. Duke took care of business against Clemson, and so I'm considering Duke right now in my top 4 based on – I think the college football universe runs through the Tar Heel State right now because North Carolina's played a bunch of real teams and won all of them, right? Yeah. They haven't played a guppy, as far as I know, and depending on your opinion of Pitt over the course of the season.
The Pitt conversation is complicated.
But playing what? Pitt, South Carolina, Minnesota, who just lost another one, and App State. So the fact that they've improved on defense, the fact that they probably have one of the best 3 quarterbacks in the country, North Carolina's in that conversation based solely on results this year, not based on like the team composition or like waiting for the other shoe to drop with the defense or something like that. So I would have North Carolina in the top 4 right now. North Carolina and Utah. I think I'm going to probably discount Florida State a little bit. They're losing the entirety of yesterday, and they nearly lose to Boston College. So I might knock them out of my top 4.
I think you value pretty good wins more than I do.
That's
you
fine.
are insane if you think Florida State's resume doesn't isn't like. I think it's like a no discussion point.
You think Boston College, who nearly lost to Holy Cross?
I think
They were
beating
up
Clemson and
31-10, and
LSU
then
this
just
year
fell
is better
asleep.
resume than what anybody's done in college football.
That's fine. That's a win. But I think
That's 2
winning
wins.
week to week. Yeah, LSU and what? And Clemson?
Yeah, that counts. They're on the road. That was a hard game to win.
Clemson's
hard
one
game.
of the 20 best teams in the country.
So
that
Clemson-
will sort itself out over the course.
Clemson's unranked and led the entirety of that game if we're only basing it on this year's results.
I just got a text that just says Rubenstein on it.
Yeah.
With a bunch of X. Rubenstein.
Nice. Otherwise, look, I respect quality wins. And so Georgia hasn't done anything for me yet this year.
Yeah.
Texas has a quality win, but like tied against Wyoming in the 4th quarter doesn't do a ton for me. And I just inherently have bias, I suppose, right now that there's going to be like a weird Texas
Wyoming
loss this
did
year.
beat future.
But
Big 12
the
champion
way
Texas
that you
Tech,
are
for the
going
record.
through your picks right now would make it literally impossible to actually rank them in like 2 months. Because if
No,
you
of
neg
course.
teams for playing close games, then it's like eventually every team is going to be negged for the same reason, you know?
Well, then what we have is we have a lot more data on the good wins.
Yeah.
And so if you have 7 good wins and 2 weird wins, then it's fine. But right now, this many weeks into the season, we're just going off of like AP voters in August.
And I don't mean to come down on your top 4. It's a very
I don't
personal
care.
thing to do on September 24th.
Have I ever cared about what Ari Wasserman thinks of me? Come on.
That's a good way to go
Well, I've
through
only
life.
said nice things to you ever.
I know. So I have Utah, North Carolina. If Clemson's a quality win for Florida State, then it has to be a huge quality win for Duke, right? Beating them 28-7.
Mhm.
Yeah, but Duke didn't also beat LSU, who is probably one of the 6 best.
Also, the
teams.
way they beat LSU was pretty.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The way Florida State did. But also, this is part of who I am. I discount week 1 either way. I discount week 1 either way because a team is never what it fully is going to be by week 4 in week 1. And it's not an accurate representation of a team in either direction. Like I'm
when there's
willing
only
to write
4
off-
weeks, you got to hold some weight to it.
No, you hold some weight, but I write off week 1 more than I write off other weeks just because you don't know what you have in a team. A coach doesn't, you give a coach and a program an opportunity to evolve from week to week, and they just haven't had that chance. So it's a great win for Florida State over LSU. I think that game looks different in week 9. That's all. And otherwise, I don't know. Like, I just think what the Pac-12 has done has been incredible. Like Wazoo now beating Oregon State and Wisconsin. The Wisconsin win looks better after what Wisconsin's looked like since. So, okay, my top 4 teams based solely this year, it's going to be Texas, Utah, North Carolina, and Florida State. And I hesitate with Florida State, but like, I don't know who
You
else
just have
is
to
in there right now. Yeah.
I think this is like just a pretty easy math equation here. Just based on like
There's no such thing, Ari.
Number 1's Florida State because they have 2 really good wins, I think. Number 2, I have Texas because they went on the road and beat Alabama. I know maybe as the year goes on, we'll get more data of the Alabama team that they beat, but Alabama dysfunctional and it's all of its glory right now. Just beat a top 15 team. Then I have Ohio State 3rd, and then the 4th team is the hardest one for me because I don't know which direction you want to go. No matter what you do, you're going to be leaving a team out that is very good, but might not have a great resume, or you might pick a team that's very good with a bad resume and leave somebody out that's really good.
All right, I gotta go, guys. Just so you know, it's bedtime over here. And
Yeah,
I've got a
go,
4-year-old
go,
and 3-year-old that almost
go.
opened my door. But I appreciate you having me. Next time I'll stay longer if you'll have me back, despite my ridiculous top 4.
Yeah, thank you so
and-
much. We're gonna only go for another 15 minutes, maybe. So you did
Okay.
the
Yes.
whole show.
Oh, great. Well,
Dan,
I appreciate
Dan.
it.
pleasure.
My
Love you,
pleasure.
buddy. Take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thanks
Talk
again. That
soon.
was Dan Rubenstein of the Solid Verbal. Definitely one of the best personalities in this business. And if you don't listen to his show, you have to do it. It's incredible. Okay. And he said he's leaving before I got to my final 4. Who was yours again, Dave?
Florida State, Texas, Washington, and Ohio State.
Yeah, so I've got Ohio State, Florida, and Texas, or Ohio State, Florida State, and Texas, because they all have, and then it's just a debate between who you want to put: Michigan, Georgia, Washington, or Oregon there in the final spot.
If you put Michigan
or
Michigan or Georgia in there, I'm just like, they
like,
haven't done anything. Like you gotta you haven't played anybody. You haven't played anybody, and you haven't looked particularly dominant as you have been playing. Tin cans. It's like whatever.
Yeah, but also too, it's like I'm putting Georgia in there because I know they're one of the 4 best teams in the country.
Well, we're talking on-field results though. That's the exercise, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Georgia was down double digits to South Carolina.
Okay, I'll toss in Washington for you. They've done it for me. Yeah,
appreciate it.
They spin it.
Toss them in there like a fish at a market.
Yeah, and a lot of people are. We got to hear Chris Callahan. Georgia does not belong. Georgia has a Bobo problem and has looked horribly. It's like who actually belongs? We're gonna find out. As this is going to be a very entertaining season. I'm very excited about the prospect of this. So, we did have another voicemail. Cam, the producer, if you're listening, you can play the Ohio State Notre Dame one. I know we have a terrible habit of talking about things before the voicemail plays, but I still wouldn't mind if we heard the voice. If you have it, that's fine. And if not, then go on to the next one.
We have a lovely Duke voicemail that we can get to.
Let's go to the Duke one then.
Hey, Until Saturday crew, this is Lee in North Carolina. Just got the news that game day is going to go to Durham for the Duke-Notre Dame game next weekend, and I wanted to get your thoughts on what the chances are that Duke wins that game. We just wanted to see if you thought that as a Duke fan we might be getting our hopes up a little bit too high for a 5-0 start. Thanks. Enjoy the pod. Bye.
I think it's a tough spot for Notre Dame. I think the idea that some teams beat you twice is very real. And I think the combination of the emotional letdown and the physicality of that game does leave them vulnerable. And at the end of the day, you're going on the road to a very good Duke team. I haven't looked. What is the line for that game, Ari?
I don't know that I've seen it yet. It's Sunday still, so
they usually come out. I'm going to guess that it's Notre Dame by like 6, maybe. I'm going to guess Notre Dame by 6. That's my official guess, but I haven't seen it. I've been tracking.
All right, let me see. It's just terrible podcasting. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to find it. It's not on mine.
Either way, I think Duke's got a shot to win that game, and I think that if they don't, or if they do, I think there's an element of thanks.
Notre Dame is a 2-point favorite.
Really?
That's the opening line. I don't know what it'll end at, but listen, I mean, Duke has a really, really good quarterback.
They do.
They've beaten the crap out of everybody that they've played. Notre Dame's coming in probably going to be beaten up a little bit.
I actually, but as I'm matching them up, I actually think Notre Dame's a really bad matchup for Duke in a lot of ways. I think they can neutralize Riley Leonard.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't find Notre Dame's defensive line to be all that dynamic.
Well, they're also playing Ohio State, Ari.
Ohio State's offensive line is their problem, though.
Yeah, but they're still Ohio State.
And
problem
they have
for Ohio State
a left tackle that transferred from San Diego State, and they couldn't get. I mean, like if they had an elite level defensive line, we would have felt that in the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
I also think that Notre Dame has the best offensive line in the country, so it's kind of like tit for tat. But if they open up at 2 and it ends up around 4 or 5. I think that'd be an interesting dynamic. So, do they have a chance to win? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially because it's at home, and good for game day to go into Durham. I love the charm of that show, going to places that
it's more exciting and people enjoy it. It's why when they go to Bama, there's like 10 people in the crowd, and if you go to Appalachian
Laramie,
State,
Wyoming, yeah,
you go to Appalachian State, there's 80,000 or whatever. So
yeah,
I think they recognize that and lean into that. Meanwhile,
all right, I just wanted to jump in here and say BetMGM, our betting partner here, has Notre Dame favored by 5.5 already. So the line is already moving in Notre Dame's direction. So
I think it's a kind of a bad matchup. I think we would not be podcasting, Ari, or talking about college football if we did a whole show without some Deion discussion. I think we have a Deion voicemail. Do we want to get to it?
Sure, let's talk about Deion.
Hey guys, this is Jamie from South Carolina. Was listening to the Sunday Sound-Off earlier and couldn't help but sit there and listen to you talk about Deion. Would Texas A&M not be the perfect landing spot for him? They got the money, he's got the swag and whatever else, and curious to hear your take on it. So enjoy the show. Thanks for everything.
So, no. Deion would not fit in at Texas A&M for a zillion different reasons. Here's the thing. I think that the biggest thing, the most important thing for Deion Sanders, wherever he is and wherever's next, and I don't think he'll seriously consider going anywhere after this season. I think Travis Hunter definitely can't leave. Shedeur Sanders, I'm not clear where he's at in his degree. I don't think he can leave. But autonomy is the number one thing I think that's most important to him. A&M, I don't think would be interested. I don't think Deion would be interested in Texas A&M. On paper, maybe it makes sense. Now, the job that I was told by an agent to watch out for, and I ran it by a coach, and he said that terrified him. Ari, you know what that job is?
What would that be?
The Houston Cougars.
Yeah, that would be something.
You have sort of a commuter school. You have Tillman Fertitta, who I think would get along quite handsomely with Deion Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
They make a lot of sense in a lot of different ways, and you are in Houston. And boy, that would be Deion running Houston. Like, that was the school that agent said, look out for. And the coach is like, oh, no. The coach is like, oh, man. But as he was sort of thinking, he was like, that scares me. Like, that the idea, like, they could, like, really dominate the Big 12 if Deion got it cooking at Houston.
Yeah, that's a good job. I wonder if he wants to go, and I don't know, maybe it won't be lateral. I mean, the boosters there have got some quiche, but I feel like if I were him, I would try to build something at Colorado, and then I wouldn't want to start over at another school in my own conference. I would want a Florida State or a Florida or an
Colorado
LSU.
was Colorado was one of the few places that would take a chance on him. Like,
no, I know, but like
now that you have this,
do you believe that Houston's ceiling is infinitely bigger and better than Colorado's just based on where?
Ari, you're in Houston. Yes.
No, I know, but you think that like you're going to just because of proximity to recruits?
Tom Herman kept a 5-star at home in Houston at Ed Oliver, turned him into an All-American, and I'm presuming a Pro Bowler. Like,
have you looked at Houston's recruiting results over the course of the past 10 years?
That doesn't matter, Ari.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, it's not. Well, don't say that Tom Herman kept the 5-star at home and then ignore the fact that they've recruited like ass for 10 years.
But,
like,
Ari,
it's been
a lot
awful.
of that is because I like Dana Holgerson a lot. The man has not made his bones as a recruiter, and that's a huge part of that. If you think Deion would not absolutely recruit like insanity if he had Houston.
Yes, I see on paper. I see on paper that being able to like drive over to it's one of the most densely populated cities for high school talent in the country. Like, I understand that, but I don't know if it's like if that is what Deion needs. Is he not getting top 10 recruiting classes at Colorado right now because he doesn't have proximity to players?
It doesn't help.
Is that what's missing?
It doesn't help. You have to do some convincing. He likes to say, we don't pitch. We just, we don't do that.
I mean, he has to go to a school that will just let him do whatever he wants to do. And I don't know that any school in the SEC or a place like A&M will let him do that. So
the combination of upside and autonomy, I look around at the Big Ten and the SEC. I don't see a lot of places that make a ton of sense. But I think Houston would make a lot of sense. But also,
too, desperation is a moving target. And sometimes teams that aren't desperate on September 24th is recording this become very desperate a year from now. So,
maybe.
That to me, I think is an interesting thought. And I'm not trying to say Houston wouldn't work. I think it would be a hell of a lot of fun. And obviously being a stone's throw away from 1,000, Division I players is a pretty good scenario. So that would be fun to watch, and we'll see where Deion ends up. But I just have a romantic feeling of like Deion going to Colorado and that being his place for like 20 years. Like, and if that happened and then they won a national championship, what if they won a national championship in year 12 and like he actually like got that place cooking?
All right, over here in the real world,
I'm saying I have a romantic vision of that.
His next job, if it's not in Texas, or I don't think like he's just looking to get out of Boulder. I don't think that's the case. But he's already doing things that will make him a commodity. And if his next job is not in Texas or Florida, I will be shocked. Like,
that would be cool if he took the Wyoming job next.
Yeah. Speaking
made
of
it
Steelers,
even more remote. Okay, so let's get to one final written submission to remind people that you can text that phone number, and then we will, get out of here. James L. via The Athletic. Can you discuss the proposed merger of the Pac-2 and the Mountain West and the promotion/regulation system that's been rumored they would use if this was the model with the other remaining G5 conferences, and should they explore it like that? What is that, like the whole thing of like, whoever wins gets relegated to the bottom or whatever? Like, well,
the idea, I believe, as I understand it, would be that it is a motivation for the Mountain West to dissolve its league so that you don't have to pay $34 million or whatever. And then Washington State and Oregon State, as I understand it, would not be subject to relegation. That's part of like how they would make it work. And you would rebuild the Pac-12 that way and then make sort of a gigantic league with like two divisions. I haven't had my nose pressed up against this story, but that's how I understand it. I mean, it's fun. It's interesting. I think it's intriguing to a lot of people, especially in the Mountain West, as you sort of pursue upward mobility and try to figure out what the best place for you is. If you're a San Diego State, if you are a Wyoming, if you are a Fresno State, all that stuff. The idea of that getting all the way to the finish line, I'll believe it when I see it. It's cool. I think people have been kicking around the idea of relegation and promotion in college sports. It makes a ton of sense. It works very, very well in all of the soccer leagues. But just there's so much money on the line that the idea of getting it to the finish line in college football feels like
the thing I don't understand about relegation in general is how do you handle the TV money?
That's the problem with all of this.
Yeah.
That's the issue. You could, if you build it from scratch, that you could never shift to it. But that's the idea, is if you sort of form a new league here, and you build it from scratch and you convince the Mountain West and whoever else you want to get in there to come do that, then you could, in theory, do it because you have a lot of leverage to draw it up and be like, well, this is how we're going to divvy up the TV money. But just in practice, it'd be very fun. It makes a lot of sense, but
maybe we should just stop trying to be soccer. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to the latest edition of Until Saturday. That was the Sunday Sound-Off. A special thank you to our special guest, Dan Rubenstein of the Solid Verbal. I ate dinner with him on Friday night, and he's just an all-time guy. There's just certain people in this world that are just like good, nice humans, good people. Dan Rubenstein's one of the real ones. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. And thank you, Dave, for being a good sport when I give you, the jabs.
Well, I can always parry and counter with a right hook. I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop on Texas, which will be maybe one of the funniest.
They're in your top four, buddy. They're in your top four now. Just let the warm waves of the comfort of that just crash over your body. Be sure you're following the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, guys. That way you'll be notified when new episodes are up. We always appreciate a 5-star rating and review. That goes for the podcast feed and the YouTube channel. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel if you are listening to it live here for the first time. And if you want to see us live on YouTube Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, follow the link in the show's description to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Obviously, likes, the shares, thumbs up, comments, all the things that you guys do are instrumental pieces to the continued growth of this podcast, and we greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll have a full load of shows for you guys this week, and we'll get you into week 5. For Dave Ubben, I'm Ari Wasserman. That was the latest edition of Until Saturday.